Hello, everyone. I'm Sandra Bargman, and welcome to The Edge of Everyday, streaming on your favorite podcast platforms and at maximizeyou.life. Are you a change maker? Do you walk between worlds, between cultures, between systems? If you answered yes to any of these questions, The Edge of Everyday is the place for you. In a nutshell, this podcast is about pushing boundaries and exploring rough edges. Through conversations and shared stories with friends and colleagues, it's my hope that we can begin to understand our edges. And what I mean by edges is those places where we are fearful, those places where we are resistant to change, those places where paradox and contradicting identities live in our beliefs and in our understandings, both individually and collectively. We live in edgy, challenging times, and we cannot keep looking away from the ugly, from the difficult. Silence is no longer an option. Life isn't black or white, it's both, and I want to talk about that. I want to face the tension of paradox, and I want to engage in the hard conversations. I want to explore the rough edges between our light-filled brilliance and our dark, shadowy corners. Because the more we recognize our own edges and get real about them, the more we can help others to do the same, and that, I fully believe, can help to change the world. So, thanks again for tuning in. Today is May 15th, and we just celebrated Mother's Day here in the US. And this special episode is dedicated to mothers. While Mother's Day is now a global event, here in the US, it originated from the efforts of Anna Jarvis, who, after her mother's death in 1905, campaigned to establish a national holiday honoring mothers. Inspired by her mother's activism and efforts to teach women about childcare, Anna Jarvis envisioned a day to recognize the sacrifices mothers made for their children. Anne Reeves Jarvis, Anna's mother, was a social activist known for her work in promoting solidarity and health education among women, especially in her hometown of Grafton, West Virginia. Following her mother's death, Anna Jarvis dedicated her life to creating a holiday that would honor mothers' contributions. In 1908, Anna Jarvis organized the first official Mother's Day celebration at her mother's church in Grafton, West Virginia, and also in a department store in Philadelphia. Anna's campaign gained momentum, and by 1912, many states and towns had adopted Mother's Day as an annual holiday. President Woodrow Wilson officially proclaimed Mother's Day a national holiday in 1914 to be celebrated on the second Sunday in May. Today, we are live in the Hive with my special guests, three women I adore, to talk about and to honor the wonderful complexities and paradoxes of motherhood, the complicated mother-daughter relationship, caregiving a parent, the joy of having children, the choice to not have children, and the mentoring and nurturing of young people. So without further ado, it is time to introduce our guests. Meg Flather is a two-time Bistro Award winner and a four-time Manhattan Association of Cabaret and Clubs, MAC, Award winner. Meg has released 8 CDs of her original music, all of which are available on Apple Music. Meg has also authored 2 books that are now available on Amazon: Home Shopping Diva, Lessons, Lyrics, and Lipstick, and Hold On Tight, A Love Story. Her one-woman musical, Hold On Tight, partners her original songs and stories from her book of the same name about caring for a parent with dementia, for which she received the award for Best Storytelling Show from the United Solo Theater Festival. Anne Kittredge is keenly aware of the chapters she has lived. In chapter 1, she enjoyed working on and off Broadway, on TV, in concert halls, and regional theaters nationwide. Chapter 2 was spent as a parent advocate and leader in the New York City public school system, taking time off from pursuing her career to raise her children. In Chapter 3, Anne returned to performing and immersed herself in the cabaret world, where she has won multiple awards, including a 2025 Bistro for her album Romantic Notions, and was also chosen as a top 5 album of 2024 by the Broadway radio show. Harriet Shugarman is one of the leading voices in the global parent climate movement, the founder of Climate Mama, and the award-winning author of How to Talk to Your Kids About Climate, Turning Angst into Action. Harriet is the chair of the Advisory Council for Our Kids Climate, an anchor organization connecting national and grassroots groups from more than 50 countries, working on intergenerational organizing and engagement strategies. Harriet is a mentor and leader with the Climate Reality Project and the recipient of the prestigious Climate Reality Alfredo Circus Memorial Green Ring Award. The full bio of these impressive ladies that I'm thrilled to call friend will be in my show notes, along with links to their websites and social media. Welcome, ladies.
Howdy doody.
Yay. Yay.
This is so great. I'm so thrilled, listeners. This is the first time we're doing this many people on one podcast, so bear with us. We're going to try to keep this somewhat organized, but we may go off the rails, and you know what? It's going to be fantastic too. So welcome again, ladies.
Hello.
Thank you.
Yay. It's so great to have you here for this special episode about all things motherhood. I like to start by telling my listeners how I know each of my guests. So I will start with the person I've known the longest is Anna Kittredge. My dear friend.
So honored by that.
I love you. Anne is like family, and she and I went to college together.
Wow.
Yes, in Pittsburgh, PA. Oh my God. We went to Carnegie Mellon University. Oh my God. We did all that and that down there in Pittsburgh, down it. For those of you listening, that's Pittsburghese. A little lesson in Pittsburghese. Yes. So yeah, Anne and I have shared many stories and stages and all things friendship and motherhood for you. Now, I know Anne knows Meg. She's known Meg longer than I've known Meg. I met Meg in the cabaret community, and I have had Meg on the show talking about her glorious show, Hold On Tight, A Love Story, which she has done here at my salon space in my reimagined garage, The Plum, and to standing ovation. And your show is extraordinary, and Meg is a leading light, as is Anne, in the cabaret community. It's glorious to have you both.
Oh.
Harriet, I know from Climate Reality.
Yes,
she was my mentor and fearless leader when I decided in 2017 to go back to Pittsburgh. And I chose
I forgot about that.
to go back on purpose, so I could go back and kind of tool around Pittsburgh, see my old haunts and such. And Harriet was my mentor and leader, and I got to witness you receive that award when I was a part of the climate change reality training with Al Gore. It was just so glorious.
It was a special time. Thank you. Yeah.
And I've also had Harriet on the show, and I want to, in front of everyone, invite you back for an episode talking about what's going on in climate change here and the budget here in New York and all those things. I'd love to have you back for a special climate change. So you're on the spot. in
That
front
would
of
be
us.
wonderful. I would love to come back and talk about all those things. Yes.
Thank you, thank you. So again, my enormous thanks to all of you for joining me here on the Edge of Everyday podcast. So the first question that I always ask all of my guests now, I wasn't probably doing it with you when you were on Harriet, but I just so love, it's such a revelatory question because people go off in so many directions when they think about it. It's what identity do you lead with? But I decided for this episode, because it's about mothers, as just we're tossing out into the wind. What identity do you think that your mother led with? Meg.
Nurse midwife, nurse midwife. She
Ah,
worked so hard for that. Speaking of Pittsburgh, her father was from Pittsburgh, Henry Fulton Davis, and had to drop out of school in the eighth grade and was a self-made, self-taught man, taught himself to play Chopin. You know, he was a very brilliant man, but he did not let her go to college, and she never got over it. And her mother, who attended Vassar, one of the first graduating classes of Vassar, begged her husband to let Rebecca go to college. And my mother spent her entire life adoring her father and proving him wrong. So she went to nursing school, and she wanted to go to an undergrad, wanted a liberal arts degree. She wanted to be a writer, a journalist. So she took nursing as far as she could. And then in her 50s, when we moved to New York, she went to nurse midwifery school and became one of the top mentors of midwives and one of the top midwives, and chose to work in the poorest public hospitals and delivered over 6,000 babies and worked until she was 77 years old, full time, 40, 50 hours a week, taking the 4 train to Bushwick, Brooklyn every day. So even though she loved being a mother and a grandmother and a partner, she was very in love with my father. I think that nurse midwife on her tombstone, I made sure that was nice and big because
beautiful.
that was all hers. That was
Oh,
all
yeah.
hers.
Oh, I feel, and the profound joy. Yeah, you can feel that. It's palpable. How about you, Anne? What identity do you think your mother led with?
This is so easy. Really, duty.
Mm,
Her life was all about duty. And um, really, it wasn't about being happy. It wasn't about, it was about
mm,
what is my duty at every moment, at every moment. Her duty as a mother, her duty as a wife, her duty as a nurse, because she was a nurse also, her duty as a sister. She was 100% duty oriented. And I think I have translated that into a healthier perspective, which is creating value. That's my driving
mm.
force, is creating value, because that's joyful. There's
Yeah.
something really joyful about it. Now, my mother was an effervescent, just beautiful person, but really her goal was never to be happy. It was to fulfill her duties.
Yeah, that makes me think of, well, my own mother had certainly had that, but I can so think of my grandmothers who really spoke in those terms very openly. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't, just it was who you were as a woman.
It was generational.
Yeah,
It was a
totally
generational thing.
generational.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you. How about you, Harriet? What identity do you think that your mother chose to lead with in the world?
Yeah, I think, and many similarities, duty comes to mind, but I think tradition.
Mm,
I grew up and my mother grew up in Western Canada, and there her she lost her father when she was young, and her mother came over from Europe at a young age, and she was the only daughter and was raised to follow the rules that my grandmother set. And she was expected and filled this role of getting married at a young age and having children and supporting my father and supporting me and my brothers, and really sort of stayed in that mold. And even she'll be 87 this summer, my mom, and still lives in Alberta. Um, and now she's a grandmother. But, that was who her identity was, and who I think my grandmother was hard in that way. And my mom stayed in that role and in that place. And for better or for worse, it was it's interesting to think about it. And I've been thinking about it, Sandra, more, for our discussion today, and where my mom's at in her life at the moment. Because she's getting a more forgetful, and life is, lots of her friends aren't there anymore, and yet that's what makes her happy too, is talking to me, and her grandchildren, her children is still the focus of her life.
Oh. Thank you, ladies. Well, it's you. I want you to tell me about your relationship more deeply, but before I get into that, I do want to honor that it's Mother's Day and ask, and some of this information can continue to come out. You've shared a bit about your relationship with your mothers already. Traditions and or rituals that you shared with your mother, that your families growing up did, or that you do presently, the two of you who have children now. What is your relationship to Mother's Day rituals and or traditions? Anne, let's start with you.
Well, I had a couple of things with my mother. First of all, I would send her a gift on my birthday because I was like, you did the work.
That's so true.
I don't get it,
Nice.
but you did the work. So I always sent her a gift. And then in her older years, certainly after my father died, I would call her at midnight on New Year's Eve. And it's probably the only night of her year that she stayed up to answer the phone. And and it would only be a few seconds, but it was just, hey mom, it's a new year, happy new year. She always expected it. So I would have to say that those were and then no, that's more. No, yeah, those are probably the two very exclusive to her.
Oh, I love that. How about you, Meg?
Well, Mother's Day, my mom and my dad were so practical, and we're like, save your money, save your money. And my father,
Wait, who spoke like that? Your father?
my father with his Boston accent, save your money. And because she worked so hard, she never took Mother's Day off. So for her to have Christmas off or Thanksgiving off, she worked all the other holidays. But I think as children, it meant a lot to her, all those homemade cards that we'd make at school, and those gifts that we'd make at school. She really loved being a mother, and it wasn't easy for her to be a mother because her firstborn child was quite mentally ill in a time where diagnoses took forever. In my sister's case, maybe 50 years to get it right, what is going on. But so my mother knew how to make magic. She was quite a creative being. She could sew costumes. Christmas would be over the top with decoration, and she made our stockings, and the gifts were so perfectly wrapped and thought out. And she was kind of shy somehow. She was a very animated leader in her profession, and she was a wonderful listener and a wonderful counselor. Everybody loved talking to my mom because she would really zone in. But I always found her a little shy. So the way she would show her intimacy, her feelings, her affection was through the way she wrapped a gift and the way she wrote a card. So I would say, especially when I was going through my separation and my divorce, I got some spectacular cards in the mail.
Oh,
and
sweet.
she cut out little articles about, strong, independent women.
I love that.
So I would say the way she led was sort of a tasteful, sort of old-fashioned reserve. And then through the way she made things, you feel all the feelings that you would want to feel.
Well, she didn't.
Of course, until she got dementia, then a lot of things changed. But
Right.
yeah.
So she didn't really you didn't get to enjoy specifically necessarily she didn't allow any traditional sort of Mother's Day things. Just it was
Save
more,
your money.
got it,
We were
yes.
all adults. This is what we did. But what was fun is when my parents were very much still alive, we would meet for dinner on Sunday night, on Mother's Day night,
Oh,
and
that's great.
and that's what we would do. We would have dinner, but not they were snobby about it. They were like, my father always said, "Oh, it's a Hallmark holiday. Save your money." But I think deep down they loved that there was a reason for us to get,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, even Anna Jarvis, who started it, got plugged into the commercialism of Mother's Day. So I think everyone feels that a little bit. How about you, Harriet? Did you have any Mother's Day traditions in your family?
When I was growing up, the same, the cards, and my father would send her amazing flowers, but then she
Oh,
was on her own, for Mother's Day. It was her day to do something. So it wasn't our day to do something
I
with
have to
her.
admit, I've done that as a mother. As a
yeah.
mother.
And then I left Alberta when I was 18, and came back and forth, but I wasn't often there on Mother's Day. So we had calls and cards, but I would always go back to Alberta in July when for her birthday, and spend time there with her. And that was our time together. And I've done that every year of my life, except for 1 year I was traveling, and 1 year with COVID when I couldn't go to Canada. So we've always spent her birthday, and that's been our mother-daughter uh, weeks that we spent
Sharing.
together. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, for me, I realize I also didn't do the identity question. For me, my mother was born in May. And so often, kind of Mother's Day and her birthday got lumped together, like Christmas. I have friends who have birthdays close to Christmas or some other holiday, and they're all like, my birthday got combined with this holiday. And and often would ask my mom, do you mind not getting it all lumped together? And of course she didn't, because she was such a glorious mother. But I think the identity that my mother led with was teacher. She came on that side of the family, a long lineage of teachers. And I think that I walk in the world with that essence as well, more probably than an artist. I walk through the world with the teacher essence that I pulled from that lineage. She was a very proud teacher, and had the patience of a saint. But in terms of our rituals with my mother, I don't have memories of like we did fun things when like we didn't take her breakfast in bed. We just didn't do that. I don't have recollection of doing that. But we would celebrate later in life and go to brunches and things. But it's interesting, the first year after her death, I started a ritual for Mother's Day that I've continued since. Sometimes it happens on her birthday, but more often it happens on Mother's Day. And the first Mother's Day in the year of the firsts after her death, I decided to plant a plant in her honor in my yard, and, to honor her life. And this first one was a bleeding heart. And it just really spoke to me, of course, because I had just been to a card store and looked at cards that said Happy Mother's Day. I was a weepy mess right there in the card store. Went straight to buy a plant, and bleeding heart was perfect. And I was out in the yard planting it, and I heard the phone ring. And of course, this is before I had a cell phone. And I went inside to our house, and I picked up the phone, and it was a girlfriend of mine, and I was crying and just weeping. She knew that it would be a rough day for me because it was the first Mother's Day. And how you doing? Sweep in. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, I just planted a bleeding heart in Mom's honor. And she goes, well, I don't know. She's from the city, of course. She's a girlfriend of mine from the city. She said, I don't know what a bleeding heart is. And I started to say, well, it's not really a flower. It's more like a flowering bush. And knowing that I say this all the time, spit out to me in that conversation while I'm weeping goes, "That's what my last date said." And of course, I went from weeping to screaming with laughter. And I was like, thank you. I can never look at a bleeding heart and not think
Oh,
of my
Oh
mother
my gosh.
and that it's a flowering bush.
I think that's the next podcast title.
exactly. Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Bleeding
God.
hearts.
Bleeding hearts, flowering bushes. That's just what my last date said. Oh, it was so
Oh my
perfect.
gosh.
So every single year when I plan something, I think of that with great joy. Oh, God. Oh, laughter, the healing power of laughter. Okay, so let's dive in maybe a little bit more about your relationship with your mothers and how potentially consciously or unconsciously, this relationship influenced your dreams and or aspirations. Harriet, let's start with you.
Growing up, I was the eldest of three, and I always wanted to travel and get away from where I grew up because my mom had done that when she was 18, and she kept this big scrapbook of the amazing places she went to. She went to Europe from Western Canada, and so it was a very big trip at that point in her life. And I grew up knowing I was going to do that when I finished high school and worked, and she encouraged me to do that and told me at that time every dollar I would make, she would make sure that they gave me a dollar and to match that. And I ended up having a life of through my work of traveling the world and working with people around the world. And even though my mother then never left, I mean, she went on some trips here and there, but never lived elsewhere. I think that was a dream that she fulfilled to a point, but then couldn't take it the next step. And so I felt in some ways I got to do that for her. And that was, again, now even when I see her many, many years later, we bring out that scrapbook every once in a while, and she tells me the amazing stories of the people that she met. So it meant so much to her. So we have that. But growing up, we weren't, and I think just listening to Megan Ann and you, how close your relationship with your mothers were, or I imagine I had a closer relationship with my father. My mom and I fought. She didn't like the guy I was dating when I, was in high school. Then I ended up dating him for 7 years because she didn't like him, and we fought a lot. And it took me having my children, I think, to find my way back to her and to understand her better, and to be able to just let some of those, you know, buttons that we push for each other, to stop pushing them. It took quite a few years, though. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think my sister experienced much of the same, much of that. And it took the death of my mother for me to repair my relationship with my father. Not that we had a hard one, but
Yeah.
but was nowhere, it wasn't the same as with my mom. So it's interesting going through some major event to heal that parental
Mhm.
experience. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you, Harriet. How about you, Anne?
Well, when I was young, my mother was kind of a silent influence on me. Similar to Harriet, actually, I was the apple of my father's eye, and he pretty much, took care of my emotional needs and things like that as a child. And I used to avoid this conversation for so many years because it always sounded like, oh, pity me. But now that I'm so much older, I realize that it's not about that. It's something that so many families have to deal with, which is generational trauma. And, long story short, my oldest sister accidentally drowned when she was 3 years old. And exactly 3 years later, after my mother had two other boys ahead of me, I was born on the day she died. And I always knew that my mother loved me. I always knew that. But she she really struggled with, uh, she had the duty of a mother. She definitely loved me, don't get me wrong, but it was it wasn't much of a relationship when we were young. And I didn't really notice it because I had my father. My father, one parent, and my father told me this once. He didn't say this about my mother. I'm understanding this now, but he did tell me once that when I was born, he didn't know if he could let go. He didn't know if he could be vulnerable and love me after having lost their daughter. But then he did, right? And I'm not sure my mother was ever able to go there. You know what I mean? And this is common. This is a common thing, much more common than you think. But yeah, I was raised Catholic. I'm Buddhist now, but I was raised Catholic, and I had to go to church on my birthday for my sister. You know what I mean? It's like when you're 6 years old, it's like, really? I don't really care. I never met her,
Oh my.
And of course, when I had children and they were 3 years old, I didn't take my eyes off them. I was like, how on earth did my parents, how are they even functioning?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you recover from that? And I think that, relatively speaking, they did, I mean, so I have to say that my relationship with my mother didn't start really until about 20 years ago, when she really disappointed me. I needed help. My husband was in the hospital and I needed help with the kids, and she just wouldn't come, and it wasn't a good reason. And I was really upset. And so I decided that I needed to grieve the loss of my mother while she was still alive. And I was really angry at first, so I didn't talk to her for months. And I very actively did this because I'm a spiritual person, so I was really working it, and it took me a couple of years. But I finally got to the point where I could see her as the beautiful, loving woman that she was, that was her essence, without any expectation of her being able to be my mother. And so when she, got Alzheimer's and stuff like that, it was so easy. Our relationship was so simple because for years I had already let go of any responsibility for her, right? And so it was an opportunity for me to so value the pure beauty of her soul, without resentment of anything. I mean, I really had let it all go. And she did something really, really amazing for me. The night before she died, we had been warned that she was going to die within days. The night before she died, she was living with me, and my children and my husband, we went into her room. We'd go in all the time, but rarely did we all go in together. And we went all together this night. And I got into bed with her, and I was holding her, and I had made a mixtape for her of her favorite songs, and we're playing those and stuff. And at one point while I was holding her, she groaned and she moved a little bit. And I thought, oh no, I'm hurting her. I don't want to hurt her, right? And I'm thinking, should I get out of bed? But at the same time, I'm thinking, but she's dying, and I would think you'd want to be held, right? So I kind of just waited, and then she stopped, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay with her. And I stayed with her for a while. And then she died the next day, and for months, I thought about that moment thinking, did I hurt her? What was that? What was that moment? I hope I didn't hurt her. And then my daughter comes up to me, she waited because the beginning you're just too, you're grieving. She came up to me and she said, "You should see this video that I took that night." The video is less than 2 minutes long. We were in there for a long time. It's less than 2 minutes long. She just happened to turn the camera on when this moment happened. And my mother was not hurting. My mother was trying to hold me. So, I can say all I want about, my mother wasn't really my mother, but look, that's a mother, right?
Oh, Anne, thank you for sharing that story. Wow. It's a remarkable thing to be with a dying parent and to witness. I had my own moment with my mother, to witness how they share who they are in such surprising, unexpected ways in which you'd never seen them be, or at least you hadn't caught it. And you could feel it yeah, wow. What a story. Thank you, Anne. Cheers to your mama.
Yes.
Love and blessings to your mama. Meg, how about you?
Wow.
Yeah.
That was exquisite. What's interesting is my relationship with my mom feels very much like we made an agreement somewhere up there.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah, because I just feel like she went, "Come down now. I need one more," because she had two beautiful daughters and a son, and they were living overseas in the Philippines. My father was the director of the Philippines Peace Corps under Kennedy, and I was this love child that they had, because life in the Philippines in the 60s was sexy. They lived in the tropics, and my mom had all these caregivers living with them, cooking, cleaning, babysitting, and they were doing great things with the volunteers. They were very excited because the Peace Corps had just begun. And so they went, my parents were invited to a wonderful house in the country, and they were guests in a guest room. I'm just going to say it. And my father would tell the story, "Your mother raped me."
Oh, jeez.
He had such a great sense of humor. She was like, "Now, just really fast, just right now." And so I was conceived. And what was really great is she got the birth experience that she wanted in the Philippines. She got a natural childbirth experience. And all three of the other babies were very 50s, forceps deliveries. I think two of them were on the Navy base because my father was a Navy pilot, where she was like knocked out and babies were pulled out. And so she wasn't as involved in her birth experience. And that's what planted the seed for her to become a midwife.
I was just going to ask that. Yeah.
And she demanded that I was in the room with her. She had gotten this, wicker basket that she made into a crib. And she just said, "No, the baby will stay here." And that she was fairly successful at nursing me. And so we bonded. We bonded in a way that I don't think my other three siblings had the opportunity to, just because of the way things were done with women in birth. And also my first 5 years overseas, she and my dad were just on fire. They were just having the time of their life, doing great things, building clinics, schools, teaching people how to farm. It was just, and then there was all this child support, and the women that cared for me would put me on their backs and they'd play their music, and I'd be there all day long with sarongs keeping me on their backs. So those early years were really intimate, strangely, because she was just she was just thrilled that my dad was happy. So much of that bond, because they met at 14, was if he's good, I'm good. And he had a restless spirit. And so when we came back to the States, when I was about 5, everything had changed. My father left the Peace Corps. It was very abrupt. And we found ourselves in the suburbs of Massachusetts. And my mom went back to work big time as a nurse. And I felt like I kind of lost her a little bit. I always knew I had that connection because we were so bonded, overseas. But I also knew to kind of find her. I would crawl into bed with her. I would, hold her hand. I would demand to be in the cart at the supermarket. And I knew how much she wanted me. I knew how much, how intimate we truly were. And I was the baby of 4, and a lot was going on. So I feel like my entire relationship with her was this quiet understanding that I was so wanted and so loved, that we really got on. I loved just being in the car with her. I loved being in the supermarket with her. I loved cleaning the bathroom with her. She was just, she had it. It was a chemical relationship that we had. It was very much a chemical relationship. It wasn't always about what we talked about. It wasn't about how much time we spent. I don't have memories of her playing with me. I have memories of her being so busy, juggling, going to school at night, nursing by day, 4 kids, worrying about my dad. Is he happy in his job? And because all he wanted to do was save the world. And when we went back to Massachusetts, he had to get a job, go to be corporate and all that. It was still nonprofit. He was always in nonprofit, but he was happiest living abroad, Yeah. So I always felt her, and I always felt close to her. But I definitely needed to do a lot of work on the relationship in my 20s and my 30s in therapy, because I realized I had adopted the way I pleased her was not working in friendships. It wasn't working in intimate relationships. It wasn't working as an artist. There was always something in the way because I had to be happy for her. I always figured I'm going to be the happy one. So if I'm the happy one, and it worked. She called me sunshine. I felt like we had a little special thing that nobody else had, but I had to work very hard to grow a woman of myself and give myself permission to not be a sunshine. And in a lot of ways, my divorce was the beginning of my mom and I really like letting me be dark, letting me be depressed, letting me be sad, not having it fixed in a phone call, knowing I was going to be sad for a while, struggling in my 6th-floor walk-up studio apartment with 2 cats. And then of course, but she was always my fiercest champion. And I love this. She gave me music. I mean, she gave me music. She gave me musical theater. She came to everything I ever did. I could do no wrong. And she came to some pretty lousy shows. And some good ones. But I remember the first thing my therapist said to me when I really found the right therapist. I said, I'm just so scared. I don't want to be angry at her here. I don't want to have those feelings here.
Why?
I was so scared that that's all it was going to be. And the therapist, God bless Lana Shah Levine, she gave me my mother. She said, if you have those feelings here, I promise you, when you go home again, you will have the relationship with your mother that you dream of. And it's very much like Anne. When I went home again, it was adult to adult. It was human to human. It was soul to soul. It wasn't so much mother-daughter. Yeah. It was the agreement that we made in the Starry Story world.
Yeah,
I had to work on the mother-daughter stuff a lot to get that.
And it's so fascinating to hear you talk about this sense of adoring, knowing that you have this really close relationship, but not allowing yourself to really be who you are. And I experienced that a little bit with my mom too. That sort of the cheerleader for I was a preemie. I popped out of the womb 2 months early.
Okay, that's incredible.
Totally. Like our joke in the family was like, if you had gone to term How tall would you be? No.
Because you're the most beautiful but very Amazonish woman. You're the most Amazonish woman I know.
Goddess, goddess.
Hey,
Well, I'll tell you
goddess,
what,
you
I was
are.
not a cute baby. I was a little Martian. I was so not cute. I had these big, huge eyes and this little squishy, like little apple head. But yeah, it was a really difficult birth. I had the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. I was dry and early, and I think that that bonded us in a way, like Meg, that there was a sense of that that I needed my mother's attention, and she was the uber mother, and she grabbed onto that. I think that's throughout I've shared this with Meg and Anne, but Harriet, my mother and I were very, very bonded. We were so close that a filmmaker friend of mine asked us to do a documentary based on our very close relationship. And which you can imagine when my mother passed away, to have that, how extraordinary that was. And in fact, I played it in the performance that Meg did at the Plum, a potent evening. And my mother had the quintessential psychic moment, and this is going to usher in, and maybe Harriet, maybe, do you still have your father, Harriet?
No, he passed away 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, so that my next question would be directed particularly to your father, and also because you were closer to him, in quotes. But my mother not invited, asked me potently while she was dying of cancer when I went into my first year of seminary to be the minister at her funeral.
Wow, that's such an ask to
Yeah, right. I mean,
a daughter. Yeah.
it's the
She knew
honor
you could
and
do that.
the
Yeah.
overwhelming psychic obligation. Like, the talk about an edge of every day.
Mhm.
It's like so beautiful and so difficult. Yes, and of course I agreed, and did it. Was the minister of the event and the grieving daughter, and it was so difficult. But I'll never forget the day, and I was with my mother when she passed. I was literally holding her hands, and I saw when she took her last. My father and I were with her. She took her last breath, her last gasp, and we knew the moment had happened. And her arms came up after her last gasp. They crossed over her chest like this. It was so extraordinary. And the next day, of course, I had to call my sister and her family to come, and they missed their opportunity. She died a good month and a half before they were scheduled to come to see her, because we knew that she was in her last days. But they came, and they weren't allowed to see the body for a variety of cancer reasons. And so I took everyone to the beach to do a ceremony, and I'll never forget walking through this grove of trees to go find a spot to sit everybody down and light some candles that wouldn't get blown out, where we could have some, share and do a great little ritual. And I walked through this grove of trees, and I felt my mother so vastly, enormously. And I felt, for the so unbelievably surprisingly, a release from my mother. That there was this release to be someone that was not bound by any desires or needs or lineage or whatever through that experience. So my question is, did any of you experience anything like that upon the death of your beloved parent?
Well, I can speak to my mother asked me for decades to sing the Ave Maria at her funeral. And I didn't. I did have it played. I didn't have anyone else sing it because, you know, we all are like this, right? But I have sung it practically every wedding and funeral in my family and my extended family, and it's usually the Ave Maria. And so, and I didn't, because, and I'll tell you why, because it was a real decision. I decided that now that she was dead, her reality was different. And I can't know what that is. None of us can, but we believe what we believe because it serves us, right? And so I believed that she would understand that it was more important for me to give myself permission to grieve than to vocalize the morning of her funeral.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel guilty about it. I mean, I'm like, she has to understand on a different level if she has any consciousness, right? That it's not that I'm not singing because I don't love her. It's for the opposite reason. It's because I did love her. And please don't make me perform, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Totally understand. How about you, Harriet?
Yeah, no, I am waiting for my father to come back and knock on the door. And I've had a couple, well, I'll share in a minute, but just in lead up, my father was like the marble man, and he could do everything and taught me how to, like remove a toilet and fix the, leaky taps and how to shoot a gun and he taught me all these things. And my mom was always there. And he smoked like the marble man, 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and got throat cancer and then lung cancer, and had an awful last year where he had to get a trach, and he loved to talk and tell stories and couldn't talk. And my mom was there to take care of him in this really awful but my dad did it with such grace, and because for him not to be able to speak, he wrote so many notes, and to remain positive even though there was only one outcome. And my mom, like, from cleaning his tray to helping him with everything, like, she was so strong for him and he for us. And then in the end, when he couldn't die, it was 10 days where he was getting it was time to go, but he stayed there, I think, so that my brothers and I and my mom stayed in a room and told stories. And we had this really special time, the 5 of us bonding around his death until he died. And so, but then it just felt empty. And I had one experience, a few years ago. I'm a little claustrophobic, and I had to have go into one of those machines, an MRI, and I was really not happy to be there. And I felt him holding my hand. I felt that he knew how worried I was, and he was there. And that's, the one and only. I have pictures in my office of the wall of my dad, and I think of him every day. But feeling, that feeling you had, where I haven't had that in that same way.
Well, it makes me wonder if, I don't know, maybe you might feel that for whatever, even not being as close with your mom as your father. Who knows?
Yeah.
You may. I just found it a strange release of the needs and the lineage and so this will be my next question after we hear from Meg. The next question being, what do you feel that you was the greatest gift that you received from your mother, from that side of your female lineage? So Meg, did you feel that about?
Well, I was so lucky because she let me take care of her. She was so strong, and she was so stubborn, and she was so independent and so proud. We lost my father first, and Harriet, it was so hard. He was such a pillar of everything. And my mom was such a strong widow. She just doubled down, went right to work, volunteered for every shift, and then went to bed. That's how she grieved my father. But when she started showing signs of dementia, actually the way we grieved my father together, that we were playmates. So we went to a lot of shows, a lot of movies, a lot of plays. She came to every damn gig. She'd enter like Dolly Levi and all these folk clubs in the East Village, and she'd walk in, you know. I mean, they were dives, but she'd come to my show. So we really bonded because we cared for my father together. We did shifts, and because my career allowed me to work from their apartment. So she needed to go to the hospital. She needed to deliver babies and be around babies. And she did the night shift, and I was his day shift. And it was a very quick, unfortunate battle with cancer, just 9 months and he was gone. But we were a little trio together. And so when it was just the two of us being playmates, she was very, very in need of me. And that was really big because she was such a busy woman. All my life, she was so busy, so compartmentalized, tried really hard to make everybody happy. And then she really needed me. So I had been waiting for this woman to really want to spend time with me my whole life. So then I got her. Then I moved her into the building. Then I moved her onto my floor. And the love affair began. I became her life and her light. And watching her brain slowly die, and simultaneously her heart enter the room more and more and more. And I got to see little Becky, the spark. I saw what a trooper she was, how understanding she was, how forgiving she was. When we would struggle with the care and we didn't know what we were doing, and she just smiled like, I don't know, it's fine, you know? But it was very interesting because she prepared for her death. She and my dad really worked hard with wills and DNRs, and I knew to have the DNR right on the wall so that if I wasn't there and a caregiver was there, no 911, she did not want to go anywhere. And she had a stroke in front of me. How generous was that? So I witnessed it and then put her to bed and camped out next to her, sent everybody home. And it was an exquisite death because she didn't have any fluids, any medication. And it was just this beautiful, gentle breath for 24 hours. Her eyes shut, happy, clean in her bed. And then one final, and that sound was like, oh my God. And I just knew in that moment, I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
I don't want to be sick, but I am not afraid to die. Yeah. And I felt this force just swirling. And then I stayed and I camped out in her apartment that night. I slept on the couch and I just felt like she flew right into my chest. I couldn't hold the joy. How she was going somewhere so magnificent. Yeah. She was out of that body. She was out of that brain. She was out of that disease. She was out of that liquid foods and diapers and people bathing her and no privacy and never by herself ever again.
So did you feel a release of any sort?
Yes. And I felt
to be something other than when she was alive. That's really the sense.
And then well, I feel like she swooped in and gave me her emotional experience of her death because I just felt this explosion of joy in my chest. Mm-hmm. And I didn't make that up because that's not what I felt with my dad. With my dad, I saw a beautiful smile, and my mom and I commented that he never looked more relaxed because this man tried so hard to save the world. He really did. He was Peace Corps to the end, human rights to the end, civil rights to the end, gay rights to the end, disabled rights to the end. And at the end, it was just like peace. He could finally say, I was enough, I did enough. But my mom was joyous. My mom she went right through the Venetian blinds.
Perfect. So all of you, I was asked this question, what is it that I feel, you can interpret it however you want, but the way that I was thinking of asking it is that when I was working with a psychic who asked, what is it that you feel that you inherited from your mother's lineage? And so you could take it in that direction, or you can take it what what did you inherit from your mother that you feel particularly wonderful about? I'll start in that. My answer in that moment was, I feel as though I inherited my sense of melancholy from my mother's side of the family. And I don't mean that like it's a bad thing. I mean it that it's a depth and a sense of presence to the good and the difficult in life in which I walk. And it opens me up, I think, to translation of that into beauty. That both the difficult and the joyful, that brings the sense of melancholy. It's artistic. It informs my artistry. I think it informs my ministry. It informs this podcast. It's that sense of the light and the dark coming together that makes me feel melancholy. So let's start with you, Anne. What do you feel like you inherited from your mother or your mother's lineage?
I would say I'm thinking of three things. The first one would have to be strength. My mother had a strong core, and I really think that, I got that from her, that strong Polish stock. And also, the how hard she would work to have relationships with that people she cared about, but she still stood up for herself, and she didn't always succeed, but family I really learned that family was important. And if you're gonna be destroying a relationship in your family, you better have worked your butt off before you have to go there. Like that's a bridge you have to really work to get across. And then the third one, and this was really when she was sick and she was living with us. And she was, definitely in the throes of Alzheimer's. I think I said this to you, San, at one point, but I feel like as we get older and we get really old, I feel like all of the masks, you're too old, you just can't have any mask on anymore. And so you're really getting to see someone's essence. And my mother's essence ended up being the most appreciative and sweet. I mean, sweet and appreciative. And I'm telling you, I watched her during this time, and I've said it to my family. I hope that if that happens to me, I so hope that that's the gift I give whoever's caring for me, because it's really easy to take care of someone who is just completely appreciative, So.
Yeah, thank you. How about you, Meg?
I'm muting because 57th Street is particularly loud. It's calming down now. It's good. And that was, I feel like our mothers were cut from a very similar cloth. Was your mom a 1930s baby?
1926.
Okay, yeah, my mom was 33, and she was born the year of the Depression, and I think that really informed her.
Mm-hmm.
And so work ethic, duty, strength, never complaining, an optimist, but also very no nonsense, no BS.
Practical.
My dad was the dreamer and the philosopher, and she'd be like, all right, Raj, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? She was the first day of Gemini, so there was a lot of Taurus in there, which I loved, and my dad was so a Gemini. And so I'd like to think what she gave me is the part of me that shows up, that's a person of my word, that honors commitments. I work very hard. Whenever I've been given a job, I over-prepare, and that's all my mom. My mom, when she was in school, would be studying for her exams and convinced she was going to fail, and we'd all be listening to her little cassette of her notes at the dinner table, and that was fun, learning about like the fallopian tubes and the uterus and placentas at the dinner table. And then she'd be like, I'm going to fail this one, you kids. And then she'd get the top score every time. So that was Becky. She was always thinking she had to work so much harder than everybody else, do so much more than everybody else, but then had this strength, had these balls, and she did it. we're going to do this and we're going to do this and I'm going to make this. So I like to think that part of me that meets my commitments, that
Mm,
shows up for the people I love, and my optimism comes from my mom.
I love that. Yeah, so true. My mother was 34 too. How about you, Harriet? What do you think that you
Those are all
received?
such beautiful stories. You know
Mm,
what? I think for my mom, my mother, like you, and the importance of family, but and then her family extended to her friends. She had lifelong friendships from, elementary school that she grew old with these friends, and um, how important it was to have those connections and to be there in good times and bad times. And I've watched her take care of some of her friends as they've aged, and she just was there as the support for them, and continues in that way. I see her with my dad's sister, who was her best friend in high school. That's how she met my father, actually, and who's moving into just with dementia suffering, but she goes and sees her every day, and they go out and they go for lunch and they go for a walk, and she is there. And so for me, I think seeing that and watching that, my, you know, close friends, over the years, I really do try to stay. I feel like I've lost a little bit of touch, but really try to keep that circle there. And broadly through my work, I when I meet people, I want to know them and stay in touch. And I think my magic skill is a connector, and I think that comes from my mom. Just watching her, in some ways, she connected in different ways. But I know when I meet someone, they should meet this person, and big things are going to come from that. And I think it has its roots in watching my mother grow these friendships that have lasted a lifetime.
beautiful. Ladies, I'm gonna put this out there. Are you good to spend a little more time? Because there's a couple of questions I really want to get to, and I'm thinking I'm going to turn this into two parts, if you're good with that. Thank you. I am going to bring tears to my eyes. I am loving this so much. Thank you for your stories and what you're sharing. Okay, so we're going to move on to children and the choice to have children, the choice to not have children. I'm going to start. I'm going to start with you, Harriet. I know that you have children. Did you want to have children? I mean, was that a given for you as in your life, as you were growing up? Did you always know you wanted children?
I assumed that I would maybe one day have children, but I also, in growing my career and moving around in different places, I wasn't sure, and I didn't meet my husband until my mid 30s, and then I wasn't sure if when he became my husband, would we be able to have kids? Anyways, I mean, who knows? And anyway, so I did imagine a family, but it wasn't if it was sort of if it happened. And I do have two wonderful children who are not children at all anymore, who are adults, a 25-year-old daughter and a 27-year-old son, who are amazing. And I love being their mother. And I'm so happy that they're in my life. And it's been wonderful having that experience of being their mother, and now being able to be close to them as they're adults. And that they don't live in the same city as I do, but we talk often and I try to see them often. But I wouldn't say I knew for sure that that would be part of my life. I'm happy it is.
Now, how has having children changed you, do you think?
Yeah, it's such a
Enormous question.
yeah. I think, growing up, watching them grow up with me, trying to maybe be like your mom, Meg, just to do it all at the same time. And I was raised with that fairy tale that you could have it all if you wanted it, and that's not true. And um, it was tough that part of it and trying to be there for them and trying to advance my work. And at different times, I think I dropped the ball on both sides, and but now I talk to them often, and I can't imagine them not being around or being part of they are my life and my life's work, as you know. Sandra is around the climate crisis and parenting and how and so I think about it a lot. What is their future going to be like as we live this emergency? And it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse before maybe one day it gets better, but it's something that's happening on a geographic, a whole different scale than our lifetimes. And so I worry constantly about not just them, but yeah, people growing up that won't have the same opportunities that I had in the same way because of what we've done to our mother, our
Our
mother.
our mother, every human being's mother.
Yes. And we've, she'll be fine, but
She'll green over, but
she will, but I'm not sure. And she's screaming at us to do better. And so I get that wrapped up with my own children and then working with parent groups and the harm we're doing to children every day now through the air they breathe and what we brought for them. So anyways, it's a big question. So
completely.
I want you to
Well,
end
no,
it.
I have one. No, I have one more,
Yeah.
and yes, and we'll get into that when I have you on the show again. But how are you feeling? What are you sensing with children today? Not just your own, who are a little older. What are you sensing with children today in terms of the climate crisis, with the level of angst and where according to this incredible book that you've written, what's the pulse of what's happening with young people now in their awareness of the crises and
Yeah,
such?
I think it's interesting. I think from maybe 20 years ago or so, where it was like, oh, we can't bring a child into the world because of the weight of that child's footprint on the planet, which, now I think it's more, how could we bring a child into the world because the world is going to be such a messed up place for them to grow up in. Um, and so I feel like with a lot of, it's such a personal choice that people make for of so many different reasons. And for every individual that needs to be respected with their choices. But I do think that there is um, a lot of questioning about what is the world going to look like not far into the distance, 10, 20, 30 years. And so even, these alpha generation, right, we're at now,
Yeah,
they're going to live the climate crisis every day of their lives. And so I think to parent through that, and um, there's a lot of, you know, many people are still having children, but there's a lot of feelings around, is that selfish?
yeah,
Is it an act of hope? Is it, who's that for? Are they going to be, the Terminator, I wrote about that in my book, but I grew up without Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator movies, and there
yeah.
was Sarah, who raised her son to take care of the world. We shouldn't have to do that. Our
Yeah.
children should to be children. So yeah, I think there's a lot of maybe more thinking about what does that actually mean than, not that people didn't always think about that, but you have to think about again
It's
what
much more
the world.
prevalent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I speak to young women all the time that absolutely speak in those terms.
Mhm.
Not being able to financially handle it,
Yeah.
and the climate, et cetera, et cetera.
Can I
So
can I interject here?
please, you were going to be next.
Oh, because that was really fascinating, Harriet. Really, I really loved hearing that. But what kept hitting me was right now there is a resurgence in uh, some circles
Mhm.
to have more
More.
babies.
Yeah.
And one thing I thought is if they start having a lot more babies and the people who are actually thoughtful about it don't,
Right.
then we're in trouble.
Right.
Even more trouble. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord, ain't that the truth? Well, we're seeing it in our own regime. Have more babies. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Oops, too late. And, and tell us about your children and your choice to have children.
Well,
That's a podcast in and of itself, but
yes.
we'll get the condensed version.
Yes. I was not mother material. And you know, we were married 14 years before we even decided to try to have children. And the conversation went like this. So Anne, you know, we're getting older, you know, are we gonna have kids?
I got
And
10 more minutes.
what?
I got 10 more minutes to pop one
Yeah.
out. What are we doing here?
Oh, okay. And I said, well, hun, I said, it would be a new adventure. Yeah, let's do it. I am not kidding you. And my mother, when she found out, she's like, are you sure? I mean, I'm not kidding. Like, nobody saw me as a mother. And so that's what we did. And we ended up creating our family through adoption because I was a little older and it wasn't happening. And, you know, we just really felt that, you know, that the parent-child relationship was very spiritual, not just biological and not just nurture, but actual spiritual. And, you know, we found each other. You know, I just love my kids. You know, there's no differentiation for me. You know what I mean? They're just my kids. And even to the point where neither of them look like me. And I remember so clearly when I was younger with her, especially with my daughter, and you know, she had friends and stuff like that. And I remember once we were with a little girl and her nanny, and the little girl was crying, crying, crying. And so I said to the nanny, why don't you take my daughter and I will take the baby and I will soothe her and I will, you know. And so I did, and we were outside and stuff, and everyone's looking at me going, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful with your baby. And I'm thinking, oh, she's not my baby. Like this, she looks nothing like my baby. And then I realized, oh, she looks more like my baby than my kids. And it was the first time where I went, oh, right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, so no, I've told my kids that they have made me a better person. They've made me a better performer. The things I learned, the things I was exposed to that I otherwise wouldn't have, the things I understand now that I would never have understood. I lacked empathy in a lot of areas, and because of the experiences I've had with them, you know, that's been taken care of. I'm maybe overly empathetic now, but I'm very, very, and I'm still not the best mother material, but I'm very, very happy that was the direction I went.
Well, looking from the outside in, you are an exceptional mama.
That's very nice.
Your devotion and, well, what I love about how you do it is you know, you're just all up in all the tendrils and I can't comment. My apologies, Harriet, but I do know Anne's kids. The way her involvement, the way you're hands-on and yet hands-off, the edge of everydayness of that, how you do that and balance that is awesome.
Oh, thank you. Because that's the goal, right, Harriet? Isn't it?
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
it's a hard line to follow, right?
Yeah, and I rest assured that you don't always, but what I see from the outside looking in is you do a damn good job of it.
Thank you.
And I know for certain Harriet does too. So Meg and I are the two broads that don't have chitlins. I can't, forgive me if I don't remember this, Meg. Did you always, was there a time in your life that you did want kids, or I mean, what was your story, and how has your choice to not have children affected your life and your choices and your career and all of the things that you've chosen to make you happy in your life?
Well, when
Another
I was a little
exciting question.
girl, I was such a caregiver. I've been a
Mm,
caregiver my whole life. I was the friend to the friend that needed the friend. I was the youngest of four navigating that mobile. I was my father's caregiver. I was my mother's caregiver. I'm still responsible with my siblings for my sister's care. And so there was a part of me when I started working, really doing the work with my therapist, that thought it would have been redundant if I became a parent because I hadn't really busted out and lived my story. And I had a lot of obligation that I put on myself, but I played a role in my family and I played a role with my friendships, that I was caregiver. And what's really interesting is there was a minute there when we were trying. And I met Jamie later in life. We didn't get married till 2007. And so there was a minute we were trying because I like adored his baby pictures. I thought, oh my God, if I could just have that little boy in the snowsuit. And then I was always so relieved when I peed on the stick and it was negative. So I thought, well, what's that about? And then we both had this great conversation about, can it just be you and me and a cat forever? And then, and I love that. We made this sort of commitment that we will be family. And then lo and behold, within like a year, my mother needed care. And so I really feel like I was a mother for 12 years. I had a daughter named Becky.
yeah.
And because she became younger and younger and younger and younger and younger and younger, and she became my baby.
Yeah.
And if I had had a child at the same time, I wouldn't have been able to do that healing with her because it was a long road.
Oh
And
my.
she wanted me. She liked her caregivers, but she wanted me. And so when she died, I felt like I lost a child in a lot of ways, like a 12-year-old daughter, because it was a long road. So now I collect other people's children, and I have a fierce nephew and two nieces, and I really like them as they get older and older and older. It's interesting.
Yeah.
If I could adopt an adult child, that would be great. But all that early stuff, I need to sleep. Okay? And I'm so anal about my house and all that stuff. But then, of course, I keep adopting these cats that have special needs. So, I'm clearly the parenting thing is happening on some scale. But I admire the mothers in my life. I don't know how. I'm a triple air sign, and I just need to go away. I love that about my marriage. We're very independent, and we just sort of coexist. And my husband will say, "What's the plan today? What's your plan today?" And I tell him my day. I don't ask him about my day. I tell him my day, and we give each other lots of room. And I know that with a child, that would have been a good lesson for me, right? It would have been a good lesson for me. But so yeah, it was something I think I had fantasies about because I watched all those movies. I loved the Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family. I loved my dolls. I loved to play. I played house with such intensity. But it was a very easy decision not to do it.
Yeah.
It was one conversation.
Very similar for me, although I didn't play with dolls, but I too had that kind of conversation with my husband. I never dreamt about it as a young person, and never. It wasn't this. I mean, I romanticized it, I think, with boyfriends, but it was never like I was socialized as a female in the United States on this planet, socialized to think about a family and creating a family and getting married. But when push came to shove, it was never really. Well, I didn't play with dolls. I didn't have. I had dolls that ran the ranch. I had a horse ranch, and the dolls ran it. The girls. Um, and with my husband, I quite literally, we were just going along, and I finally one day I was getting a little older, and I said and I really did kind of say this to him, like, jokes aside, I really did kind of go, listen, I got 10 minutes left to pop one out. What are we doing?
Mhm.
Are we like seriously, what are we doing? I've got you 10 minutes. Are you good? Am I good? I mean, of course it wasn't that sassy, but it kind of
Oh, come
was.
on. Yes, it was.
Yeah, Anne knows me well. Okay, it was. No. But it was not a difficult decision for me either, Meg. And like you, I also collect young people. I do have, and I've said the exact same thing to my husband. Like, if I could have popped one out at 27, it would have been great. But I do have an adopted daughter, somebody that if I could have had a daughter, I would have wanted this human for that. And I feel so deeply blessed to have her and now her husband in my life. It's just both my husband and I are just overjoyed. They really call us their New York parents, and I'm like, yes. But does anyone ever, Meg, did you ever have to deal with anyone asking you that proverbial stupid question, how can you not have children? Isn't that selfish? Did anyone ever ask you that?
I never got the selfish thing, but I did experience because I love, I live in Hell's Kitchen where we all just march to our own beat. And and I always say this that my life hasn't changed that much. In my 20s I lived in Hell's Kitchen. I sang at Don't Tell Mama and I sold cosmetics. I mean, and I had a cat, and that's my life now, but there's now a husband added to it. But I'll tell you when I feel it is when I go to other parts of the country and go to family parties, and I am outnumbered by a lot of mothers.
Yes.
I've suddenly my Eileen Fisher New York black makes me look really intensely Eileen Fisher black. I just feel like such a freak. But like you, I collect these wonderful people, and what's wonderful about these family reunions, and when I go up to see my goddaughter's family, the mothers are, well, particularly my goddaughter's mother, are so generous, and they make me feel like a rock star. And being Auntie Meg, and so she really kind of protects that part of me that feels, different, stands alone. That wonderful expression. So yeah, and as you know, I have a marvelous young woman in my life named Hannah Jane, and she really looks up to me to help shape her womanhood. So I'm not a mother figure, but I am an older woman partnering with her mother in life
Like a mentor.
to help shape her womanhood and give her permission for her feelings and
Yeah.
chart her course and stop the comparing, because compare leads to despair, and so it's a very rich relationship. But I also struggle sometimes because I never raised a child. And
Yeah.
so I have great expectation for maturity in all these young people in my life. And when you're raising children, you're helping them become these adults. And I'm just like, well, you're an adult, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're there now. Come on, you can do this. So I have great. I'm in awe of mothers that understand when to push, when to allow, when is this normal, when is this being spoiled. Like I'm amazed by the negotiating that I see at the supermarket and on the subway and in the trains, and just how do you find that place of creating a human being, not a spoiled brat, and knowing when to be compassionate and when to be strict. I think it's daunting work.
Yeah. And that line shifts, the sands shift moment to moment for a variety of reasons. Absolutely. Well, ladies, I have loved this conversation more than you can know. And I am so grateful to all three of you for joining me for this incredible conversation about motherhood. Thank you.
Thank you for including me.
Thank you.
Extraordinary. Three very different paths with mothers and motherhood, and it's just been so rich. So before we go, I want to share with our listeners something, a plug, if you will, something that they can know about you that's coming up, or something you want, what you do, all of your links, your full bios, all of that will be included in our show notes. But what's on the leading edge for you right now, ladies? What do you want our listeners to know that's happening for you right at the moment? Your cutting edge, your leading edge, your hard edge. Let's start with you, Anne.
Well, I just premiered a show last night, and it was supposed to be a one-off, but I don't think it's going to be. It went really, really well. So, the information about future shows will be on my website, and you'll have that in. So that's great. And then the thing that I've been just finishing up on now is my first holiday album.
Oh, that's right.
Believe
Yay.
it or not, when you're doing a holiday album, you're doing it in March. And it has to be done by June. And, and so it's a little weird. But we're finishing it up, and I'm very excited. We called it You Slay Me. It's a double entendre. Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to releasing that.
Oh, that's so great. Yay. How about you, Harriet?
Well, and you'll share all these different links, so I'm not going to talk about that, but I wanted to say that there's so much happening in the space and world that I work in that's being cut into bad pieces, in on the work, in science, in climate and weather. And so I think we all are like, what can we do? And I think as mothers and caregivers, as we need to stand where we're needed and show up. And so I am trying to show up more. And interestingly, on Father's Day, which is in June, my kids are coming to New York, and on June 14th is a No More Kings Day
Yeah.
from 1 to 3 in Bryant Park, and I'm going to be there. And so
Yeah.
I just,
I'll be there with
See
you,
you there.
Harriet.
I'll
awesome.
see you
Yeah.
there, Harriet.
Okay, well, maybe we'll connect so we can actually maybe meet each other there too. But
Totally.
hopefully it'd be so
And
many people we can't see each other with.
well, hey, I will reach out to you, but I will expect that a lot of people will be wanting your attention. And listeners, I'm having Harriet back on for an episode where she can share all of this in such greater detail. And I thank you, Harriet, for agreeing to do that.
Thank you.
So I'll be in touch with you to set that up. What about you, Meg? What's on your leading edge?
Oh, well, my husband and I wrote a lot of songs together over the last 2 years, and then I wrote a few songs of my own. So we've released my 10th CD of original songs, and
Wow.
yeah, 10 CDs. It doesn't mean every song is a hit, but it's an interesting. They're like journals. They're like journals
Yeah.
of each chapter. And I put this show together called Walk Home. And it's an interesting example of, like what Anne was saying, when you don't know if something's going to be a real thing and you're just going to do it once just to honor it. And it's a show that partners songs that during COVID were giving me such strength on my walks, of the great singer-songwriters that came of age with me. The Sean Colvins, the Suzanne Vegas, the Ricky Lee Jones, the Joan Armatradings, Kate, like that, my playlist of these great women that shaped me, discovering my voice as a folk singer rather than what the original plan was the theater voice. And so I partnered these two pieces, the original songs from the album with these covers of these great women that really shaped me. And I call it Walk Home. And the album is called Walk Home. And so we're going to do that again on August 7th. But all my CDs are free to listen to on YouTube, and just go to my channel and all of them are there. And then the other big thing that has happened that I'm excited about is I I created this very contemporary look at Rodgers and Hammerstein a few years ago through the lens of a singer-songwriter and not an actress. And I'm going to be performing it in Hammerstein's living room on his 130th birthday.
Oh, that's special. Anna.
Yay!
And he will be there.
He will be there. I have a thing with that man. That's all I'm going to say. I have a thing for Hammerstein, and he knows it. But it's an interesting example of envisioning something, because it'll be a benefit, and it'll be a benefit for the museum there. But I kept seeing it, and I think it's a great thing to leave people with, because it's not about getting everything you want. That's not. There's like a handful of things in your life that are driven by something higher, like Anne's mother, duty, service, and so the way this kind of easily happened, meeting the people and having them respond and having them come and see, like not banging on doors and forcing things and see me and like me and notice me and hire me. It just was this organic, we'd love to have you. Isn't that lovely?
Breathtakingly lovely.
Doesn't always happen like that.
Yeah, the flow of the universe and the synchronicities and the ease. Full body chills. Yeah.
So that's the summer plan, and very thankful for this conversation today.
No,
Thank you. Yeah.
You're great women.
truly great women. Thank you again for being on this podcast, ladies, on the edge of every day. I'm going to close out with a quote that I found and a little bit of a closing prayer. Too dark in here. Let me get over here. O source of life, blessing to those who have carried us in their bodies, in their hearts, and in their minds, and all those who have mothered us in some form or fashion. We thank them and honor them all, those we can hug today, and those who are now gone or distant from us. And blessings too on those for whom mothering is complicated, difficult, heartbreaking, or incomplete. Dear ancestors, help us to heal and restore and rebuild all generations, forwards and backwards in time. Let us dedicate this new era to mothers around the world, and also to the mother of all mothers, Mother Earth. It is up to us to keep building bridges and to bring the world closer together and not destroy them to divide us further apart. And so it is. Thank you, listeners, for spending your time with us. Remember, you are always at the edge of the miraculous. So until we speak again, take good care.